She does. Thank you. When is it?
Carrots, you wanted in peas? Not carrots.
Well, carrots and peas, but you said you are.
We have one
I
here.
think it's,
Oh, peas are the.
And we're out of those.
Okay.
I think I have it.
It's nice to see everybody and a few new faces. My name is Shan, and it's my birthday today, so you can I made it another time around the sun. I want to remind everybody that if you want to become a master gardener, today is the last day to sign up for classes. And you can, those little pamphlets over there have information on how to contact. If you don't have anything, but have one of those how to contact to sign up for the classes on the web. But we're a lot of fun. We're a lot of fun. And we learn a lot of things. And we want everybody to be a master gardener. So if you're interested, please join us. But today's the last day. And what it entails is you have to take classes that are taught by SDSU professors. And every week there'll be a class. And every class you have to take a test, open book, open computer, no stress. Then at the end of the program, they'll have 2 in-person classes here in Yankton. I don't know when, and I don't know where, but if you sign up for classes, they'll let you know. And then you take an open book test at the end, and then you get to join us and have a lot of fun. And we have all sorts, you have to put in volunteer hours. This is our volunteer hours. Mary and I are doing our volunteer hours. Martis is doing her volunteer hours. So we have all sorts of projects. And if you have a project that you want to do that's educational to the community, we will help you get that going too. We have a lot of different programs. And the next program that's coming up, and I'm not sure when the date is, the last Tuesday of the month, right?
I think so.
We'll have our spring fling, and I think it will be out at Hillcrest again. And I'm sorry, I don't have more information about that.
Yeah, kind of watch. It'll be in the paper, I
Yeah.
think, but
And you're on our list, so hopefully we'll send you information, send you an email to let you know. But that's the next thing that's coming up.
But that's sort of, I double check it.
Yeah, and next month, we're gonna have a fun on-hands class. So there's this new way of starting seeds, and it's called blocking, where you don't use containers. And Sherry is going to be here, and we'll do some seed blocking, and you can take your seeds home. And she has suggested that if you can, to bring like a styrofoam meat tray doesn't work for us vegetarians, but I'm sure there's some others. But a styrofoam, plate that's like this to take your seedlings home with you for your plantings. So that's when you won't want to miss, because this is a whole new way of starting seeds, and you'll get a heads up on how to do it, and you'll get a heads up by having the seeds already done that you can take home. So that should be a real exciting class. And with that, I'm gonna let Mary take it away. I do have a bunch of cuttings from Christmas cactuses over here. And everyone is welcome to take a pot. They do need to get watered, but I have experience, and I know that cleaning up your car with dry soil is much easier than cleaning your car with mud. So I let it dry out a bit. But help yourself to those, and I'll let Mary go.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you for coming. And since we're still in the winter and most of us aren't growing outdoors, we thought it might be a fun time to talk about indoor plants. And that is something that I have to say, I have learned a lot of this the hard way by killing more plants than I kind of care to admit to. But I think what I'm going to try and cover today is really more about plant care, which boils down to what do plants actually need, some common plant problems, and a question I get a lot is about plant toxicities, and so I'll just mention a little bit about that too. But I think when we start, we can ask ourselves, why do we grow indoor plants? Well, I think for a lot of us, it's because we like to garden, and in South Dakota, we don't get to garden quite a bit of the year, so it lets us bring some green things indoors or to buy some green things and kind of tend them and grow them during the winter. That brings bright green things and flowers into our house when sometimes it looks pretty bleak outside. So it also enables us to kind of expand what we can grow. In this area, we're probably limited to zone 4-5s, but in our home with the right conditions, we can grow zone 8s or, really challenge ourselves with some kind of tricky tropicals. And so it kind of expands the possibility of what we can grow. I think most of us would agree that plants are decorative and beautiful, and they just help our house look nicer and homier. Studies have actually shown that there are psychological benefits to having plants in your home and in your office, in that they can document decreased stress and increased productivity. So they just do a lot for us. It's a real fun hobby, and I guess it's easier than pets. So sometimes they don't wake you up at night to go out. But and I think the thing too is that you don't really need to have a green thumb to be a very successful, happy indoor plant grower. And I think that what happens is plants really actually want to grow. It's kind of in their DNA to grow. And so if we even provide some of the basic needs, they will grow and thrive. So the thing is, we need to know our plant. Many of us have started out either buying or being given a beautiful, healthy plant, and it looks so nice, it looks great. And before too long, we look at the poor thing and we say, oh no, what happened to my plant? And the plant person feels sad and frustrated and usually ends up throwing the plant out. And the bad thing to do is to view that as a failure. What it is it's an opportunity to learn. You can look at that plant and kind of say, where did I go wrong, and what did that plant need that I didn't know about what it needed? And so I think it's good to start with really some of the basics of what actually do plants need, because if they're missing these things, then they will not thrive, and then we end up with plants that look kind of unhappy. So all plants pretty much need light for photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process where they take light energy and turn it into carbohydrates, which is their fuel source. And they really can't grow without an energy source. They need to be in an adequate temperature. They need to have some humidity, although that can be somewhat variable. They definitely need to be watered. They need adequate nutrition. And the good news is that most plants are really pretty adaptable. You know, if we just give them the basics, they're really going to do just fine. And the key to a lot of this is minimal care on a very regular basis. That's sort of the key. And the contrast to that is intensive care on a very irregular emergency basis. So just that small care regularly is really the key to success. Most plants will be happiest in an environment that's fairly close to what their native environment was. The problem with some of that is that our house usually has a lot of different, it has many climates inside it. It might go all the way from nearly subtropical in our bathroom to maybe absolutely Arctic in other parts of our house. So the key to some of this is to kind of look at our house, maybe from a plant's perspective as to what might be a friendly place to live, what might be a very hostile place to live. And so when you look at your house, sort of take an inventory and sort of look and decide what different zones your house might have. Take a good look and say, where are my windows? What direction are my windows facing? Are they south? Are they north? Or most south and west windows will probably get the best, brightest sun. Some of our east windows are wonderful for kind of more indirect, but good sun still, but indirect. A lot of our north windows don't get a whole lot of sun, especially here in the winter. And maybe some of our shade lovers might be very happy over there. So we need to match our plants' light preference to the spot in the house where it's going to go. Also, as we can look and see, that may change also during, the time of the year, the time of day, our light situation might change. We can look at how humid our house is, and we can look at potential sources of drafts. Most plants do not like drafts. So if they are by a door, and then we open that door, and of course here it is winter in South Dakota, and they get a big blast of cold air. Some plants are very, very intolerant of that. And so if they start getting some blasts, they're not going to do very well. The other thing is true if they're near vents. If they're near an air conditioning vent, a heating vent, and they get that kind of a draft, they will not like it. So beware about putting plants near some of those things. And the thing about it too is it's important to know your plant. Every plant has its own desired characteristics. And so to start with that, to know your plant, it's good to actually know the name of your plant, and that means just not kind of a common name, but the real scientific name of what is your plant. And part of that is because I'm going to encourage you when you get a plant to go ahead and do a little research. Take that plant, but do some homework on the plant. Because sometimes, we get these plants and they either don't have a tag on them, or they have a tag and it just has a little bitty stake that has very little information on it. But if you go, and I'm going to kind of say, I can't say enough good things about a lot of the literature that's on the extension services. During some of this talk, I went to the SDSU extension website, and I've been on it before, but every time I look, I'm just so amazed at how much information is there. And it's often by individual plants, so you can get an entire article on your plant that's going to tell you exactly what that plant likes. And so that'll enable you to be smarter about your plant, and then you can go ahead and try to match your conditions to what that plant wants. And that's going to be setting you and the plant up for success. Some of the extension services, plant catalogs might have more, nurseries might have more information. But a lot of the extension services I just have found amazing. South Dakota, SDSU has a great one. Minnesota has a wonderful one. I've looked at Wisconsin's. Maryland has a really good one, Connecticut, I just like so many of them, it's just, I'm always amazed when I go there, the wealth of information that's on those.
I'm gonna insert something that I just
Yeah.
found out.
Yeah, please do.
So I just found this out like a couple weeks ago. So I have a new iPhone and I don't know if it's on the old iPhone, but if you take a picture of a plant and you go to the information and go look it up, it tells you everything about that plant. So you don't even need to go to it. So that was something new that I just learned. And so I thought that was just such a
That's
neat
nice.
attachment there.
It is good to know your plant. The other thing too about going to find information on the internet that I want to say is sometimes you'll find some really outstanding things and sometimes you find some pretty out of line kind of, I don't know, old folk remedies or things that haven't really been studied. And so I would say a lot of times if you're looking at things and you find that ending is edu, you probably are going to be more safe in that information has probably been on actual plant trials. And they're going to know and they will have backed up what they actually say. Some people say kind of you can find, put Kool-Aid in the hole for a sweet tomato and all kinds of wild things. That doesn't have an edu. But anyway, so just try and get reputable sources too, but that's kind of handy. A lot of us have
I thought that was just
have
wonderful,
phones that
and
will
I didn't
tell us
know it was
that.
there.
and we know what they are. And so I think set yourself up for success with the right plant in the right spot. And it's also good to go ahead and pick out a healthy plant. It's not good if you bring a plant home that's still a little maybe under the weather. And so when you are there and you take a look at this plant, really pick it up, take a look at it. Does the pot feel real light? Does it feel like it's pretty solid? Look at the leaves, look under the leaves, look at the stems, maybe even a smell of the soil to see if it has kind of an off smell or a rotten smell. Don't buy that plant. Get a different plant. So you get yourself a healthy plant, take a good plant home, you're going to be in more success. The other thing too is it's good to kind of start a plant journal. We often suggest that for a garden, but I think a lot of times we don't think about that indoors, and it's very helpful. We can write down the full name of what we purchased. We can go ahead and write down the date we purchased it and some of the information about it. What we can do after that too is kind of jot down maybe some of our observations about how the plant's doing, or boy, it has too much light here, or I like it here. And just as some information so you keep learning from that plant as that plant tells you what it likes or doesn't like. So anyway, I just took a couple screenshots to give you kind of just an idea about this. Is off the SDSU website, and that if you have questions and you say, gosh, I'd like to grow a spider plant. Well, you go there and sure enough, spider plants, how to. You start to say, oh my gosh, how could I have an aloe vera? What does it like to do? Really helpful. Sometimes it has other questions too. Let's say you say, I have a poinsettia and I want to know if I can make it bloom next year. And sure enough, they have about 4 articles on poinsettias just on the SDSU website. They have one on care. They have one at kind of teaching a little more about plants are photoperiodic, and that means plants like poinsettias that need to be dark for a part of the season in order to bloom. And they give you some points on how to keep it alive for next Christmas. See if you want to tackle making it bloom or not. I have a slide that shows you, if we have time, some of the steps, and it's kind of involved, but it can be done. So anyway, one of the other things to do is if you are a brand new indoor plant gardener, it's probably good to start with an easy plant. And they've divided a lot of plants into kind of easier ones, medium ones, kind of hard ones. And so it doesn't make sense if you are just starting and this is one of your first plants to pick one of the hardest plants you can grow don't do that. Just pick some of the easy ones and kind of get into it, and then kind of you can expand as you get better and you get more knowledgeable about the plants and their needs. And some of the ones they suggest as kind of ones that they sort of thrive on a little bit of neglect. And so things like snake plants, ZZ plants, pothos, spider plants, iron plants, cast iron plants, and some of the succulents, they just they sometimes thrive on a little benign neglect. And so they're a good one, a really good starter plant. Some of these others are a little bit trickier. They might ask you to do a little bit more for them. They usually do like some bright indirect light, and they probably need a little more attention and a little more constant care. But those are things like the monstera, rubber plants, peace lilies, Chinese evergreens, dracaenas, just a little more care. But it's sometimes worth it if those are the plants you like and they're really beautiful plants for your home. Some of the others, now here's a couple that they have classified as more high care. And these are probably a little more sensitive to the environment. You got to be a little careful about how they get exposed. They need high humidity, so you're actually going to have to actively do something about that. They need fairly specific lighting, and they need really pretty consistent watering, and some of them even need purified water. They won't live on tap water. So as you get to some of these trickier ones, you may save them for a little later. Don't start with one of these. One of the things too that I think I've been guilty of, now that I've been doing some of the research, I promise to be better. When you take a plant home, I have been guilty of just taking it, walking it in the door, and putting it where I want it. I learned a real sad lesson doing that once, so I'll go through this, how you should do it. But the way you shouldn't do it is the way I did it once, and I learned a sad lesson. I had kind of an interest in orchids, and so I had probably bought a couple, and then people knew I kind of liked them, so I had some gifts, and they were all just happy, beautiful orchids, and they had rebloomed, and they were just really nice orchids. Well, one day I happened to be out, and I saw a really cool color I hadn't seen before. So I bought it, and I looked at it, but it looked pretty good, and I really loved the color, so I bought it, I brought it home, I put it out in the window, and in about a week, I saw it had little fuzzy spots on it. And I kind of was like, uh-oh. And so I moved the plant. I started every known treatment I had, and it just came back. But worse than that, it started showing up on my other orchids. And so I tried nearly everything I could think of. I washed them. It was kind of fair weather, so I took them out in the driveway and washed them all off, changed their soil and changed their pots, and gave them neem oil and insecticide and everything I could find. Well, it kept coming back. And then, not only that, it jumped to my African violets. I had an absolute epidemic in my house. So I finally, if you see in any of these articles at the bottom, it always says discard severely infested plants. Well, that kind of broke my heart, but I did it. I threw out every one of my orchids, everyone, and the African violets, everyone out of the house. And then I watched some of my other plants, and I said, you guys, one spot on you, and you're out. You're out of here. I'm going to get really tough on this. And so I did that, and I did throw out some other plants, but touch wood, it's been almost a year and I haven't seen another spot, but I had to get really drastic. So save yourself that problem. Remember that when you bring a plant home, the recommended way to do it is to give it a soft landing. These poor little plants, they were probably very happy in a greenhouse. Then they got taken out of the greenhouse. They probably got put into a truck and drove around, or they went into an airplane. They did something. And then they go sit in a store. It might be a a nursery, could be a Walmart, but they sit out on a shelf for a little while. And that's a lot of trauma for a plant. Plants don't particularly like that. So when your plant comes home, one, you want to quarantine it. Don't mix it with your other plants. Take it to a room where it can be by itself. And you want to let it just rest for a while. Unless it is super dry, don't water it, don't fertilize it, don't give it direct light, and don't repot it. Just let it sit in its little pot off by itself. And I would recommend probably 2 weeks. In some of the extensions, some places said 1, some said 2, some said 3, some said 2 to 3. I would say at least 2 weeks, because sometimes it takes a little while for stuff to show up. And when it's in there, inspect it carefully. When you go in and out and handle it, wash your hands real carefully, so you're not introducing any disease or pest into your house. So be very careful. And just let it sort of just be there and kind of adjust to your house. It's a new location. Once it has passed its little quarantine time, that's the time that you can probably bring it in and introduce it to some of the other plants too. And that might be a time that you want to repot it. Sometimes they just come in small plastic pots or different things, and you actually maybe want a different pot for it in your house, and that's okay. Pots come in just as a huge range of sizes and materials, and so really pick whatever you like is good. But one thing is plants all need drainage. So if you are picking a pot that, when you pick it, either look to make sure it has at least one hole or a couple holes. If you have a pot you're just in love with and it doesn't have a hole, then go ahead and maybe keep your plant in sort of a liner that has lots of holes, and you can place it in that pot, and then when you water it, take it out of that, place it in the sink, water it, let it drain, put it back in the pot. Or if you want, you can drill a hole in that pot. But really, it's very, very important for plants to have drainage. And I have certainly received some plants as gifts, and they're in these beautiful bowls or these beautiful pots, and they have absolutely no drain hole. And so if I would keep it in that, unless I was extraordinarily careful, the plant would probably get root rot and die. The other thing is it's really healthy for plants to go ahead and flush them once in a while. Otherwise, sometimes things sort of build up inside, and it's just very healthy to flush them. So drainage in most plants is really important, and you can start that off right with the right pot. The other thing about it too is that you don't want to take a little pot or a little plant and put it in a big giant pot. It's going to flounder in there, plus it might look a little funny. So really, when you're picking out your pot, just go about 2 inches bigger than the root ball. So don't go too small or it's not going to have room to spread its roots. But about 2 inches better than the root ball is the best way to replant it. Then if it grows and grows, okay, then replant it, but don't put it initially in too big of a pot. Go ahead, and actually some of this is, when I first started this, everybody always put gravel and shards and all kinds of stuff in the bottom of the pot. Then later, during the Master Gardener's course, actually, they said, oh no, that's a bad idea. Initially, it was so that hopefully the water would drain better, it wouldn't compact on the bottom. And apparently that, in Master Gardener class, they said, no, that's not true. Well, on the other hand, I was listened to the International Master Gardeners conference last August, and one of their speakers said, well, absolutely, that's not right. So that actually things probably do drain a little better, but what happens that the soil in some of these pots is kind of limited. It's not like a garden where they have all this room. They don't have that much room. And while it might help it drain a little bit, it takes up a big chunk of its space. And so even if it's for a different reason, it's still a bad idea. So don't put the shards or gravel or whatever in the bottom. So the other thing too is to have the correct potting media, and you never really want to use garden soil. One, it might introduce pests because it's not sterile. And the other thing too is it's often too compact. And what'll happen in a container or a pot is it's going to start compacting down. And so you really stay with potting media is better. It'll be sterile, and it'll also have things like sphagnum moss and things to keep it so that it will be better aerated and allow for better water flow through it, which you are really going to need, especially in a small space. Some plants do require special potting media. Sometimes things like a cactus is going to be much happier in more of a very dry, kind of gravelly, sandy kind of mixture that allows for very fast water flow through it. Some things like orchids, actually, if you look at at their media, it just looks like chunks of bark. It doesn't look like there's really any soil in it at all. But they're very happy. They hate wet feet. So if you took regular potting mix and you put your little orchid in it, the orchid is probably going to die. It will not like that at all. So you do need to kind of match the correct potting mix to your plant too. So be cautious about some of that. When you are planting, it's a good idea to kind of tip it, the container that it comes in on the side, and kind of give it a few good taps through the bottom. Never grab it from the top and pull it out, because I had one of my kids do that once, and that doesn't work. Does not work at all. They just rip right off the roots, which is not very good. So doesn't work. And so when you put the plant in, you want to go ahead and fill the rest of the pot up with the media that you've chosen. And go ahead and fill it to probably just only about a ½ inch from the top. And so that'll give you enough room that you can do some good watering and give as much potting material in there as possible for that plant, because they really do have kind of limited space in there. One thing that too is, don't pack it down, because it will need to be aerated. And let me see where I have a picture coming up here in a second that will show better. But soil and some of the potting media is not solid. It has lots of macropores and micropores, and they are essential to good health in the plant because it allows air. The roots need air. They have to have air to breathe, or they don't breathe like lungs like us, but they do breathe, and they need these macropores with air in them. And it also allows for good water flow so it doesn't get saturated and water kind of soggy, which will lead to kind of root rot, which is not a good thing either. One of the other things that plants absolutely require is light. And they have to have light in order to do photosynthesis and get energy. And sunlight is a wonderful complete light for them, but sometimes we don't always have that kind of sunlight in our house. So supplemental lights can be very helpful. It's very hard for a supplemental light to reach full sun. You can add, but to really get full sun, you probably need the sun. So, and you kind of look at kind of the light quality, you look at the light duration, and some of the plants that really need bright sun, they need to have at least 6 hours of bright sun. And so you need to be cautious about some of those that are really requiring that. If it's winter and we've got them by the window, they might get some, but they might need sun plus some supplemental light to really give them what they are going to need in order for them to thrive, and especially for them to bloom. If they don't have that kind of light, they're not going to bloom. One fact that you don't have to really remember this at all, this just caught my eye and I thought it was just interesting, is how much difference the distance from the window makes. That when we measure how much light there is, we sometimes do it in foot candles, and I think that's how a lot of like architects and maybe interior designers, as they're looking at the light, they often look at it in light candles and a foot candle, and a foot candle is equal to a lumen. And so if you are 1 foot from the window, it'll be 100. But if you're 2 feet, it doesn't go in half. It goes down to 1/4. So it almost goes down, rather than arithmetically, it kind of is almost geometrically going down. And then if you even go 3 feet, it drops all the way down to 11. So as you go a little ways from the window, the available light really falls precipitously. When we define kind of the types of light, we usually look at bright light, kind of intermediate light, and low light situations. And
Guess who didn't turn their phone off?
yeah. But bright light means that it has, in order to get that in your home, you probably need to have a pretty sunny southern or western window to face that. And it probably needs at least 5 to 6 hours if you're in a plant that have a plant that really requires bright light. And most plants that need that kind of light also don't handle drafts very well. So be a little cautious about moving your plant too close to the window, because sometimes in the window there can be drafts, or the pane can get really very cold, and it can actually damage the plant if you get them too close. They're often real tropicals, and they just aren't going to handle that kind of cold. Indirect light can actually be found in kind of east-facing windows are a good place for that. In fact, my orchids absolutely love the east window, and I keep them there year-round, and they totally love east, but they absolutely like southern, western would be way too much sun for them. So you got to kind of think about what your plant is going to like. And there's certain plants that love bright sun, some that kind of more like this indirect. And then we have some that are low light plants. Some of these even can be tropicals, and maybe they lived in sort of the understory of the other plants, and they can really grow and thrive in pretty low light situations. And so some of these shade plants might do very well in low light places. So if you have places in your home that you look and say, boy, they don't have much light, well, maybe get yourself a shade lover. It might be just totally happy there. But don't put one of the bright light lovers, or they're going to be very sad. One way that you can kind of do a test at home is to say this is a shadow test. If you put a white piece of paper in the place where maybe you want the plant, and you have it's a sunny day, and you put your hand about a foot above the paper, and then you just look at the shadow. If it's a real dark, solid shadow with really sharp edges, you are in a place that will have bright sun. If it's kind of a vague shadow with kind of much more indistinct edges, it might be medium light. And if you look and it's not really much of a shadow at all and the edges aren't good at all, you might not even see a very good shadow, then it's your low light. So that's kind of a quick, easy way you can check some of the locations in your house. Some plants that are suffering from low light situations, you might see them all start to lean. They're all going to start growing towards the plant or the sun. They're going to say, hey, I need more sun. And they're going to start, instead of growing really nice like your plant, they're going to start heading off that way. And one of the other things too is they'll start getting real leggy, which means kind of their stems and the distance between kind of these inner nodes is going to get real long, and they're going to start looking kind of leggy. And when you see that starting to happen, you can say, uh-oh, this plant is talking to me. It's telling me I need more light. Please give me more light. And sometimes if they don't have enough light, the growth will really slow down or stop. The leaves will start getting real tiny. Some of the leaves might get pale or yellow. And even in some of the very variegated plants, if they don't get enough light, they'll start losing their variegation. They'll start looking just a solid color instead of their real pretty variegation. And sometimes plants that have not enough light, they are not photosynthesizing, and so there really isn't a lot of activity inside the plant. And so they're not really consuming water like they would if they were actively photosynthesizing. And so sometimes the plant, if you water it and then you say, gosh, it's just staying so moist, maybe it's not having enough light either. So that might be one of your clues. And if you find that your plant doesn't have enough light, some of the things you can do, you can move it closer to a window. If there are curtains or drapes in the room, you might open them or remove them. You can just completely move the plant to a new spot. Sometimes even cleaning the leaves will help if you got a lot of dust and dirt on the leaves. By cleaning them might help them absorb some of the sunlight. One thing that's kind of a nice thing to do is if about every time you water the plant, you rotate it about a quarter turn, you're going to keep your plants growing straighter rather than leaning and growing to the sun. And that's something sometimes I've not done, and all of a sudden I look at my poor plant and it's just off somewhere else. And so try and remember to when you're watering, just rotate it. And the way you can tell that sometimes is if you're taking the plant and putting it to the sink, sometimes you remember exactly where it was. Maybe just put a little line or a notch, take a permanent marker on the inside of the pot, and then, kind of rotate it. You know where it was so you don't lose track. And certainly it's helpful to sometimes add supplemental lighting, like some of these grow lights if you're having a lot of trouble with low light, which many of us do in the winter. It's really hard to get good light to our plants. And trial and error, observe your plant. And sometimes if you've actually placed a plant in a spot where it's getting bright sun and maybe that's too much sun for it, you might see that the leaves start getting brown or crispy, which is the most common thing. You might get whiter bleach spots. The leaves might start to wilt. You might get some drooping. You get leaf curling called tacoing, stunted growth, and again, yellow. And you notice some of these are the same. Yellow leaves might be one way or the other. So, kind of look at your plant, study your plant, kind of trial and error, because some of the symptoms are going to look a little similar. And to get them if they're having too much light, you might want to move them to a more indirect spot. You might want to trim away some of the damaged leaves. If they have some brown or crispy leaves, go ahead and trim those out so the energy of the plant goes into new and healthy leaves and not into these old crispy ones. And then sometimes if you want to shade it a little bit, you could hang a curtain or a drape near it to kind of help give it a little more shade. And you can rotate plants so that you can kind of move them around a little too. Bright light, some of the plants that really love bright light, some of the suggestions for ones that are kind of light lovers are some of the succulents, the palms, sedges, snake plants, spurge plants, and herbs. Even when I was doing this, I have a snake plant that doesn't look so good, and as soon as I was making the slide thinking, I got to move that snake plant. So anyway. The indirect light, that some of the plants that like that are Thai plants, China doll plants, hibiscus, orchids, jasmine, dragon tree, and fiddle leaf fig. And some of the low light lovers are lucky bamboo, pothos, ferns, ivies, peace lilies, ZZ plants, philodendrons, monsteras, Chinese evergreen, and pearl plants. So I think sometimes it's good to just know your plant, and so you get it in the right spot, and it's going to be much, much happier. When we get to water, the thing to remember is that overwatering is the #1 killer of plants. And the question that's just about always asked is, well, how often should I water? And the answer is when the plant needs it. It's really not a good idea to go on a schedule where, okay, every Monday you're getting water. Because that may change with season. It certainly can change with kind of the growth cycle of the plant. If it's actively growing, if it's blooming, it's going to want some water. Many plants during the winter really go pretty dormant, and some of them go very dormant, and they may need little water. Some succulents and cacti need no water for several months, maybe November, December, January. They might not want any water at all. And so it's not right to say, okay, here's Monday and you are getting your water. And so, because they're not going to like that. So kind of, again, listen to your plant and look at it and see what kind of growth cycle it's in. And trial and error, again, that's kind of what it is. But probably the best tool you have is your finger. And you can just stick it in the potting media. And if it feels dry and you're in maybe an inch or 2 inches, it's time to water. If you reach in and it still feels pretty moist and wet, don't water. Maybe give it a few more days, come back and check it again. And your plant is going to be happier. And a lot of plants like to dry out a little bit between watering. And it will save you a lot of plants from having root rot. And when you do water, go ahead and water thoroughly. You want to go and give it a bunch of water so that the water really just runs out through the hole. And that'll help not only really soak into all the soil, but it'll also flush out some things that you don't want in there. So that's really good for it. And don't just water a little bit every day. What happens with that is the center part of the root ball never dries, and you're setting it up for root rot. And the roots don't need to expand. They just sit there and right there in the middle. So much better to do less frequent, but really a solid flushing out kind of watering. And sometimes the pot, let's say we kind of forgot it or left it, and it will get so dry that the soil starts to pull away from the pot. I mean, I've seen that. I don't know if you have, but I've seen it. And just watering that, the trick to that is you might take it and water it, and the water's going to run right through the hole right away. But what happens is go right around it out. So you might think, oh, good, the water's coming out the bottom. I'm good. No, you're not good. Because that soil has become what's called hydrophobic, where it's actually kind of fears water and it kind of contracts, and the water is just going to run right around it and out. So if you want to correct that situation, you're probably going to have to take that whole pot and submerge it and let it sit there for 15, 30 minutes, something like that. So it actually has an opportunity to go ahead and soak all through the root ball. And let's see, and the other thing too is it's kind of easy to see a wilted plant and say, oh my gosh, it needs water. But that's not true. Kind of use your observation, check to see, because there's many other things that can cause a plant to wilt. And sometimes it's even root rot, and the worst thing you can do is go give it more water. So kind of don't just jump to the conclusion that it's dry. And let's see if we can go on. This is a little picture of kind of giving an idea of what that media, if that soil structure, if it's healthy, what it should look like. It should have macropores, micropores, allowing air and water to flow freely. And plants really like that. So if we compact or we kind of waterlog them, they lose this and then they suffer. And signs of too much water, sometimes we'll see wilting, and we can start growing mold and mildew. We'll get stunted growth. The soil just will never dry out. And we'll get kind of soft, mushy stems, and the leaves will droop. And it'll start to, unhealthy plants like that are really a setup for infestations of pests and certainly of molds too. And sometimes that soil will get a really unpleasant odor. And signs of too little water, sometimes it'll be dry, brittle leaves. You'll get curling of the leaves and stunted growth. And if it's really bad, that soil pulling away. As far as temperature in plants, most plants are pretty adaptable to home temperatures, but they really hate drafts, so really avoid drafts. And some plants really enjoy kind of a cooler night. So if it's possible sometimes to have the temperature 70 during the day. A lot of plants like it 50, 55 at night. And so it gives them kind of a cooling off at night. Humidity is another factor to look at in your plants. And kind of remember that warm air holds more moisture than cold air. And that most houseplants are from tropical areas where sometimes the humidity levels can be 60 to 80%, which is pretty high. And then we take them to our winter home, where sometimes the humidity is about 10 to 30%. And you can see there's kind of a mismatch there. So if we have some of the tropicals that really like more moisture, in fact, a lot of plants do like more moisture, misting is not very effective. We can kind of mist them, gets the leaves wet for a bit, but when they've looked at it, it really does not do a major effect in changing any of the humidity levels. But gravel trays are a suggestion that are pretty effective if you have a plant that really needs it. What that is sort of a tray that you fill with gravel, and you can fill the water up to kind of about the level of the gravel. You put the pot on top so that the pot is not actually in the water. But then as the water evaporates, it actually does create kind of increased humidity around it. And sometimes even getting a room or a whole house humidifier helps a lot. And so I think that's good for people too. We finally put in a whole house humidifier too because we were so dry. My husband kept complaining all the time. It's much better. So our plants are happier and we are too. So that helped. And grouping plants together creates a microculture. And when I was doing this slide, I kind of looked at my husband and I said, this is kind of an aha moment because months ago I had told him, I have some air plants that I've been trying to grow. And I had some singles, and you know how sometimes they come and you put them on the fridge or something like that. Well, they always died, always. And so I thought, well, I don't know, they're supposed to be living on air. This isn't. Well, I decided I was kind of trying to do a little better. So I got kind of a glass dome and I put one in there and it was okay. And I actually was given a couple. So then I loaded it up with about 3 or 4 inside the dome. And I looked at it, I said, why, they're just immediately happy. I couldn't believe how much better they looked. And so I told my husband, I said, they love each other. I've never seen such happy air plants. They didn't die. And they were like growing out of the thing, you know. I was like, whoa. And so when I was actually doing this slide and I came to the section and it said grouping plants together helps humidity. It makes a microclimate. And I was like, aha, there it is. So I think that really, at least for my air plants, it really worked. So. And this is like what one of those humidity trays looks like. Nutrition, I guess I would also say that all plants need some kind of nutrition. The plants that we buy usually are not in any kind of soil. They're usually in a potting mix. And sometimes the potting mix has virtually no soil in it. And so the material that they're in is designed to hold them straight and to hold some water, but not to provide nutrition. So all plants in pots and containers really do need some nutrition. So we have to help them out. They're gonna starve if they just sit in that little pot. And so we need to do that as part of our maintenance in their health. And plant fertilizers come in water-soluble powders we can mix, liquids we can mix, and sometimes slow release. They probably all work pretty well, but follow the instructions. And pretty much every extension article I read said use them about half strength. Don't give them full strength. That the amount and frequency probably depends on the plant and the instructions on your type of fertilizer. So, you know, read the instructions. But more is not better. And actually, it's better to give less than too much. And the reason for that is that it takes plants energy to use the fertilizer. And so that's why fertilizer is not a medicine. If you see a plant that looks kind of sickly, sometimes you think, oh my, it doesn't look very good. I better give it some food. But what happens is that is going to add an extra stress to that plant. It takes energy for a plant to absorb and use the fertilizer. So kind of hold off. It's not medicine. It might actually make it worse. With kind of overall, in summary, plant problems are, number 1, overwatering. And number 2 are environmental stresses like drafty windows, cold temperatures, not enough sun, those kind of external things. Some of the others are pests and diseases. And kind of a list of the common ones were mealybugs, spider mites, aphids, scale insects, fungus gnats, whiteflies, thrips. And some of the other diseases were root rot, powdery mildew, and leaf spot. And I pulled up some pictures. I have some information, but we don't need to read all that. But just to give you kind of an article that I would strongly suggest is if you go to the University of Minnesota Extension website, they have an absolutely excellent article on managing insects on indoor plants. And they go insect by insect. So the key to this too is to know your pest. So you figure out what it is, and then there's, you could look under a microscope or get some help from hopefully master gardener, ask the extension people. But anyway, kind of what their take home on all of this is choose healthy plants. And this is an article that you should pull up. I printed it, I'm gonna keep it, it's just really helpful. But what you wanna do is really choose healthy plants from the beginning. Prevention's much better than cure. And you can minimize this. Healthy plants really resist a lot of these. They don't get sick so easily. Regularly look at your plants. When you're watering or you're looking, observe, look under the leaf, make sure that you're observing those and you catch, if you do get something, you catch it early. Sometimes really early problems are easy to fix. Severe infestations, you're probably gonna end up just throwing the plant out. And just if you do find any problem, isolate that plant like ASAP. And so, because healthy plants have less problems, and as long as they have good water, good nutrition, they're healthy and they can resist a lot of this. And when you do find a problem, go ahead and identify what the problem is. Is this a pest? What kind of pest? Is it a fungus? What's going on? But usually, first thing, isolate the plant, wash it, clean off the leaves. You can go ahead and treat it. You might try a neem oil. You could try an insecticidal soap. With some of these, you can monitor or kind of decrease numbers with yellow sticky traps. And you can go, even when if you need to, after all that, you can go to an insecticide that's approved for indoor use. But really, I think basically badly infested plants probably just need to be discarded. And I have some kind of fun pictures. You don't want to see these in your house. But anyway, this is just a picture of what mealybugs look like. And that's the one that got my orchids. But anyway, then there's spider mites, and you might know them. They have that awful webby look all over them. And one of the things about spider mites too is you can sometimes, if you turn them upside down over a white paper and kind of shake the plant or the leaf, sometimes you'll see little pepper spots fall down and they move, and then you know you have spider mites. Because a few different things will sometimes do webs, but if they have that, then you're pretty sure you have spider mites. Here's just a picture of some aphids, scale insects. They're kind of a real problem. And fungus gnats, we've had those sometimes. I had a bamboo plant and I kept too much water in the bottom and we got a good crop of those things. So, and let's see. And then white flies, they'll just flutter away. They're pretty easy to find because if you shake the plant, you'll see these little white moths come flying. And thrips, they're more of a problem usually in greenhouses, but occasionally you might take one home from a greenhouse. Get rid of them. Powdery mildew is more of a fungus. And every one of these just about has their own handout on what to do about it. And then leaf spot. I just wanted to kind of near the end talk a little bit about toxicity. A lot of times, we wonder about our plants. And plant toxicity is really about any adverse effect that happens from contact or ingestion of plants. And sometimes that can range from really mild skin irritation to really severe, severe reactions. Most of the indoor house plants are not as poisonous as a few of them that we can grow in the garden that actually could kill you. So it's generally good, don't eat them, but sometimes we have children and pets and sometimes they do things like that too. But it's good part of the reason that it's good to identify the exact name of your plant, get the information and read about it, is that if you have children and pets around, you can put in your journal, yes, this could be toxic, or things like poinsettias aren't actually poison, but they often, that kind of white sap can cause quite a dermatitis in a lot of people. So even when you're handling the plant, you might want to wear gloves if you're going to be around that sap. And so it is good for you in that information, know your plant, to find out how irritating that could be to people or plants. And if that's the case, you could put it in a place where it's not very accessible. Maybe a dog or cat couldn't reach it, a child wouldn't reach it, something like that. Or maybe you just won't have it in your house if it's very toxic. And young children, I think it's good to kind of instruct them not to put plant material in their mouth. I have a couple grandkids and we've gone through that discussion about how plants are not good to eat in the house. And fortunately, a lot of times plants are they have kind of a bitter, nasty flavor. So a lot of times kids and dogs don't eat very much. And fortunately for a lot of these plants, it takes quite a bit to make you sick. So a lot of times you'll luck out and they won't get sick at all. But if a houseplant is ingested and you're really concerned about what it might be, call a physician, call an ER. The National Poison Center number is up there, and or just dial 911. So. But the Poison Center is the National Poison Center, and you can talk to a person right away that will give you some advice on what you need to do. And so I guess just kind of in summation is just growing indoor plants is a great hobby. It's a lot of fun. I think most of us really enjoy it. It beautifies our home. And the take home for today is you don't need a green thumb. Just know your plant, and the plant's going to tell you what it likes and doesn't like. And then when you and the plant kind of form a partnership, you'll be happy and you'll have a happy, healthy plant. So it'll work out great. And minimal care on a regular basis is really best. And prevention beats treatment every time. So anyway, so thank you. And we're just almost on time. So thank you. And I'll take questions. I'll try to do questions, but yeah.
I just have a question. I live in an apartment building and some of my neighbors have plants out in the hallway. So they're always exposed to fluorescent light. They never have darkness. What happens? I mean, they seem to be thriving, but.
If they have a low light plant, it'll do fine. There's some plants like peace lilies and some of those do great. Fluorescent light's good.
Okay.
But if you had a little plant that liked bright sun, this 5 to 6 hour guy, that would die in the hall.
Okay, but does it matter that it's not getting any darkness?
No.
Okay.
Some plants will adapt. I mean, some plants are just amazingly adaptable.
Yeah, okay.
So, yeah.
I use diaceous earth a lot, and it seems to take care of like fertilizing even my plants and then the bugs and stuff. And will they take care of any of the white mold or anything like that?
I think the white mold probably, and the sooty mold is probably much more from overwatering. So if you are just really careful about draining it and making sure it's well drained and watering in between, a lot of people do suggest even maybe repotting your plants maybe every 1 to 2 years, because some of that soil will compact and it'll lose its nutrition, and so that may help it too.
Can you overdo the diaceous earth with soil?
That's a good question. I mean, I think most people mix it in, but I think it overall is pretty good for the plants. So, and I guess that's it. So thanks everybody. And there's some real nice plants to take home and give it. Oh, and their Christmas cactuses are wonderful. They're very forgiving and they're gorgeous. I didn't change my light at all to this plant. I have 2 of them. And I didn't do anything to it. And by goodness, they remembered it was Christmas and they all bloomed. I didn't do a thing. And I think what happens is they sit by a window and they could tell just without me doing it. They just noticed it was getting a little darker. And I'll be danged if they didn't all bloom on time. So. I knew I'd probably run out of time. Yeah, sure. Grab your plants and then I want to
The very healthy one.
Yeah, she never went to create a plants for like small.
Oh, okay. And getting the
How you doing, Margie?
take a photo of that. Yeah, actually, Margaret had messaged me a question before this, but I was afraid I'd run out of time, which I did. So I put that in at the end, but I'll give you the other one. University of Wisconsin-Madison has a wonderful article. In fact,
I've never had much luck with it.
and so what they said to us, and they also said,
Six to 12 weeks. Then you it involves a lot. So my goodness, thank you very much.
that's basically what that says. It's really, you can do it. It's real hard, and it's probably never. So they said, you pick a good one that has lots of foods and very healthy, and enjoy it and love it. And probably
Yeah, and I love it when you go to different countries like Mexico and that, you go outside.
They just hated you.
Flowers on it.
And on the South Dakota Extension, essentially have 4 articles on concepts. And they're kind of the same.
And after you said it, also, I just explained that a couple days ago.